Hey,
There.
hey, how are you?
Pretty good.
Nice, nice. Can you believe this is our last session of this book?
Yeah, we've gone through pretty quickly, even though it was a pretty short book in the first place.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I feel like it's semi-quickly. It feels like a short and a long time at the same time, to be perfectly honest. Um, but yeah, I'm ready to just get right into it if you're down.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, great. Well, the first chapter that we're going to talk about is chapter 10. Thank you. Sorry. Okay. Okay, yes. It's called Why Government Policies Matter.
Didn't we go over that last week or the week before? Are we on chapter
Our
11 and 12?
chapter 11 is a plan for getting to zero, which I think that this is honestly the most important chapter of the book, in my opinion. What do you think?
Uh, I think so. Kind of lays out the next steps and makes a couple good points, going for going forward.
I think it gives a lot of good reminders for those of us who have thought about it for a lot, and it gives good points to those who have not thought about it that much.
That
Like,
I think that's pretty true.
yeah, just like the nuances of certain things, if that makes sense. But yeah, he starts just by saying that he was kind of worried there for a bit when public interest was really lagging on this topic. Um, and I was too. Oh my gosh, I remember in like college and stuff, I was so stressed out learning learning all this stuff and how bad it was, and just like realizing how far we had to go in such a short period of time, and it just seemed like that was just never going to happen. And now it actually, crazy enough, I feel like even when he was writing this book at this point, he probably was like, geez, I don't know if we're going to get there, guys. But even just within like these last, I don't know, 5 months, it's it's been quite an astonishing amount of change, and it's been really cool to see. I know it's not like it's definitely not quite there yet, but it's really good. I don't know. That's my
Yeah.
opinion. What do you think, Mickey?
Well, I mean, I guess I never stressed out about this stuff, but I guess in the last
How?
half, I guess I see solutions and I think we can get it done. I'm not as worried about it as some people, even though it is a issue that needs to be dealt with. But I'd agree with you. Like in the last 6 months, year and a half or something, there has been some really good positive developments in both policy and technology to kind of
Mhm.
help us, adapt and mitigate going forward.
Mhm. I think it's also because I have been paying a lot more attention to the news just because of my channel, and so I've really learned like what happens literally every week, and it just seems like things are moving so much faster than they used to. Um, and maybe it's just because I'm paying more attention to it, but also I think it is too. But anyways, and I think it helps that there are a lot of different websites that have been kind of pointing out the way for different groups and institutions and stuff. We had the EIA report come out recently. I can't remember what that stands for. Or no, that is it EAI?
International, yeah,
IEA.
yeah,
I get
one of the
mixed up
two.
with the Energy Information Agency because that's the
Yes,
EIA, and then
yeah. One's
man, that's just
international,
mean.
one's here in the U.S. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, well, the international one, they recently, I think, either refreshed or created a new plan. and I'm going to cover it on the channel, just like the ins and outs of it, because I think it's the biggest organization, international respected organization, to really come up with an international plan, because that really suggests
You're
to me that maybe actually people in power would actually follow that instead of just like a hope through, like, for example, Bill Gates' book, breakthroughenergy.org. Like, I would love to think that politicians would look at that and pay attention, but would they? I don't know, because it's just a billionaire's point of view. But like the actual International Energy Group giving a play-by-play on what to do, I don't know. They might take that seriously.
Yeah, you're talking about the IEA report about 2050, the outlook, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I downloaded that report and read it. Already skimmed through it for a bit. They put out a lot of good stuff, outside of their outlook reports. But at least from what I read in some of the commentary, that report is very optimistic and assumes quite a number of advancements in the next decade or so. So it really should
Hmm.
be interesting to see how that pans itself out.
Yeah, yeah, it really will be. I disagree with, who was it, John Kerry, that said 50% of the emissions that we need to cover require new technology. I don't agree with that.
No,
I don't think
I
it's
don't either.
50%.
No,
I'm really
I don't think we
wondering
need
where
new
that,
technology. Yeah.
I mean, I think we need to improve our energy storage systems, and I think we should play around with hydrogen more. Those are my main two
I,
things that I think I could
I
see
think
new
I think you'll see
energy.
hydrogen happening. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
So those would be mine. That, but I see that, to me, I think that's more like, or maybe something also for like airplanes or something. But like, to me, that's probably like 20% of the emissions, and I think we have technology for like 80%, if not more.
Hmm.
Maybe more. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
But we're a lot closer than like 50%. And a lot of people think it's like 50%, and that's not good to instill that, you know?
Hmm.
Yeah. But anyways, okay. So, uh, sorry, one sec. I'm sharing it on things again.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
I did it. We're done with that. But he also talks about how 2030 is not realistic. That was also something that was definitely in like the 2020s issue, was whether or not it should be completely like carbon neutral by 2030 versus 2050. And of course, 2030 is like completely not real, not possible. And so it was like, oh, so are we doomed, or like do we have a chance? That's how it felt to me,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, yeah, I'm glad he like he wrote that because a lot of people, well, not a lot of people, but some people like to view it like we're doomed if we don't get by 2030, but really the goal is 2050. 2030 is a benchmark to see where we're at, is what it comes down
Right,
to. If you think oh
exactly.
2030 has happened and we haven't achieved anything, end of the world, then I think you're, probably short-sighted when it comes to
Hmm.
solutions.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that, it also helps remind us that anything is better than nothing, too. So, like, if you give yourself an unrealistic goal, you might just give up. And that makes it just all or nothing kind of thing. Whereas if you just continue to work on it, and maybe you don't, like, maybe you're not perfect, but you're like a lot better than you were before, that does make a difference in scenarios like this. Um,
Yeah, I mean, that's ultimately what is the line of thinking that's happening, gonna have to happen for a lot of people. Is just see it as that way. The
yeah,
improvements we make in 2030 is just a step forward to whatever our goal is in 2050.
yeah. Well, see, this whole part of making reductions by 2030 and even making promises like that seemed far-fetched, like literally 6 months ago. Like there were a couple countries that was starting to happen with, but a lot of countries, sorry if it's noisy in the background, a lot of countries, like that was, it didn't even seem like it was on their minds. And I think that it's really changed just within like this last Earth month, and like a little bit before that. now majority of countries have plans, which is insane. And the plans are more reasonable than they used to be too.
Yeah, and I think that comes with a bit of time understanding how, implementing the plans is going to work in their current setups. Things
Yeah,
become a little more realistic.
they're actually talking to experts and economists rather than like seeing what would just sound good politically. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think some places still have the problem with
Oh,
just
they do.
listening to the green activist or something and then implementing plans.
Hmm.
Um, I'd very much cite Germany as that example. But a lot of other countries are
Interesting.
looking at the other countries and saying, "Hey, look, we see what works, what's potentially going to work for our country. Let's make the smart move." And in doing that, they make a good PR move too, and then
Yeah.
save money, save you know energy, save time.
Yeah. I'll tell you, the main country right now that's slacking is Australia. They need to remind themselves of the fire that was under their butt not that long ago and will be back again, you know, the fire being the
Did they
forest
just
fire in that
did
case.
they just set something up, or what did they do? 'Cause I saw them in the news recently.
Yeah, well, so the UN has been, because UN's in charge of the conference that's happening on starting tomorrow, or no, wait, what day is it today? It's Wednesday today. It's starting on Friday, um, in Cornwall, and so the UN person is asking Australia to step up their commitments because right now, for a pretty big country, their commitments are honestly not impressive at all. On top of that, they've been under fire recently for approving a new fossil fuel project expansion, which has not been good.
That's what it was.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So there's a couple things, but like that's the main one is that they're just not taking it seriously enough, and there's been like mass protests, like a lot of school walkouts and stuff. It honestly sounds like how the US was like just last year. It's
Oh,
crazy.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd have
So,
to read a little bit more into the Australia thing to wonder why they expanded that plant. If it was more of a reliability issue, or as if they just already had the funding for it and they just built it because they needed to not waste the money.
yeah. I feel like I get the impression that a lot of it exported, but I don't know. Um,
Okay, that would make sense. Yeah, if it's a country's, revenue thing.
Yeah, exactly. So they're like choosing revenue over like climate change policies and stuff, you know. So
Hmm.
it's a sticky issue. But yeah, so that's one. And then there's also issues within the US. In my most recent video, I talked about how the US is slipping in a couple areas. Like Biden recently approved three new drilling projects. So
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
yeah, so it's
Mm.
it's like we have to keep up our momentum and not just start sliding on our promises and stuff. Like I know that we don't necessarily have all the moves to properly transition some of the jobs right away, so we don't want to like risk jobs. But at the same time, new projects. Anyways,
Well, there is still a demand for it, so that's the thing. If there's
I
still a
know,
demand,
but
people are still going to need the product, and we still need the product. So those industries are going to continue to build until it becomes they can't, finance the plant, or it looks inevitable to become a stranded asset in 5, 10 years or something. They
yeah,
say
I don't
most
know.
of the
I think if you can
you know
extend a project, a fossil fuel project, then you can revert the fundings to creating like switching one thing to a like a nuclear plant or something like that. You know, like I just think that there's better places to spend the money, but
no, there
that's just me.
absolutely is. But
Yeah.
there are different players, especially in the oil business. I read an article probably a couple weeks ago at this point, and they said the only people who are drilling or drilling anymore are really the smaller companies. They still see profit in it, so they're picking up contracts from these larger energy companies who are dropping them off, and concentrating on
Dude,
other, their other assets. And they're saying, well, if somebody wants to drill, they jump on it because they can still make money with their bottom line.
Dude, that's the same kind of thing as how the main methane emitters in the US now are these small private entities, like
Yeah,
these small private companies, not the giant ones like they are, as those suck too, but like this a lot of the methane emissions are coming from the smaller companies that are not getting as much attention, and they're kind of sneaking through the cracks, and it's like, ah, no, no, stop it, stop it. Okay, we've gone pretty off track. Let's go back. Let's go back. Where are we? Right, 2030
so
goals. And okay, so he says we're better off pursuing two strategies at the same time. First, going all out to deliver low carbon electricity cheaply and reliably, and second, electrifying as widely as possible. Yeah, those are basically the things that he has summed up throughout this book. Um, and I also liked how he like clarified a lot of things. And one that he clarified was don't just simply look for the countries that are producing or that are reducing emissions. Look for the ones that are setting themselves up to get to zero. And that is a good point. Honestly, though, I have not seen all that much distinction between the two as of late. It seems like the ones that are reducing emissions are also the ones investing in technology, but I don't know. But I see where he's coming from. Like, think long term, not short term. But he emphasizes that this is urgent, which is good because you really need to emphasize that for this kind of topic, like every 5 seconds. Um, and he says experts were telling us that the massive outbreak was virtually inevitable and the world did not prepare enough. So then he was like comparing it to his Pride project, which is reducing pandemics and epidemics. Which he has also done throughout the book a lot, which makes sense, especially with the current event that's going on and the fact that it's on all of our minds. Yeah. Anything you want to add to that section?
no, I think you got that covered. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a professional highlighter. Um, and okay, so then the second part is innovation and the law of supply and demand. And it gets a little economic-y on us, but good looking out. So he basically just talks about how we need to use a comprehensive approach using multiple different disciplines to properly solve this problem. And not only do we need to come up with innovations in actual technology itself, but also in like uh, the way we do things, which I thought was another good distinction. Because it emphasizes our need for societal change in general, honestly. Um, yeah, and he basically talks about that we need to supply innovation and create a demand for innovation at the same time. And he starts going into that in more detail in the next several pages. Hey, Mickey, do you want to read off the technologies needed just so that we can have a bit of a summary on that?
I can. I mean, yeah, the first two sections there, the supply and demand stuff. Uh, to me, that's pretty basic for transitioning in any capacity. If
Yeah.
you don't have any incentive to change, you're not going to go anywhere, regardless of how good your idea is and how urgent the
Mm-hmm.
idea is. You know, so I think he's bringing that up just to say, hey, don't forget about this. This is going to be our main avenue between the policies and consumer choice.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
you back to these technologies needed. Let's see, what does he put on here? Clean, basically green hydrogen. No carbon emissions during production, I assume. Grid
Mm-hmm.
scale electricity storage, which can last a full season, which we don't actually have in any capacity right now.
No.
That's still in development.
Yeah.
Electro
So that's
fuels
technologies.
are, yeah, here and
Yeah.
there. Advanced biofuels are here and
Yeah, he
there.
likes that.
Zero carbon cement we don't really have.
Mm-mm.
Zero carbon steel not yet.
Mm-hmm.
Plant-based meat and dairy. The meat stuff is gaining traction in some areas, but it's still not up to. It's not like a a fast food place has done that just yet. Um, Zero carbon fertilizer, that'll be interesting to see
Yeah.
because that'll really have to come from developing ammonia
Yeah, exactly.
from a carbon, free source. Next generation nuclear fission, that's already set up and ready to go. It just needs to get through a couple of regulatory hurdles here in the U.S. at least.
I did not know that.
Fusion is about 20 years out always, so we don't we can need it, but we I don't think we can expect it.
Isn't
Carbon
that the joke?
capture, uh, carbon capture. Let's see, it's got some good promise. There is a couple pilot plants. There is
Mm-hmm.
one pilot plant here in the Illinois area that's ready to go, so they're going to see how that works.
Mm-hmm.
uh, Underground electricity transmission. That's that idea, at least from what I've read, has been around for a bit of time, but it's just right now it's just cheaper to keep them up on the pylons rather than digging trenches and burying them. Let's see,
Yeah,
zero
and
carbon
it gets hotter.
plastics. Yeah, zero carbon plastics. That comes down to you know your hydrocarbons being produced in a synthetic way, and that has not been
Right.
done commercially, only in the lab.
You kind of need
Geothermal.
better carbon capturing starting off.
Yes, especially if you're going to use something else.
Yeah.
Geothermal, that has kind of got a resurgence right now. There's some people wanting
Yeah.
to plant some of those geothermals here in the US, rather than
Mm-hmm.
just keep them up in the tectonic plate areas. So you may see a
Right.
new geothermal plant coming online maybe in the next 10 years, 5 years.
Yeah.
Pumped hydro, that's, only where you have the dams. So we need it, but you're not going to see any more of it expanded unless somebody wants to build a new dam, which is kind of frowned upon at this point. Thermal
Right.
storage, again, that's in development for the most part, at least for large scale. Drought and flood tolerant food crops, we do have those already in many
Yes.
countries, and we are continuing to
Mm-hmm.
improve the effectiveness of those. Zero carbon alternatives to palm oil, I know nothing about, so we're just going to leave it at that. Coolants that don't contain F gases, I think we do have alternatives like we talked about before. So really his table of technologies needed is basically 70
They're in
30, maybe
various.
it's 60-40 is what it comes down to. We have about 60 of those technologies already and just about
Yeah.
ready to go with them already. And about 40
They're
of
just
them are in
all
non-existent
in.
or development.
Yeah, they're all in various stages of
Yeah.
ready, various stages of development. Yeah. And I will say for the zero carbon alternatives to palm oil, I'm not completely sure what he means besides maybe the deforestation process that goes into having enough space for palm oil. Like right now, palm oil is extremely un-eco-friendly and it's
Yes.
everywhere. Like literally look in the back of anything, especially like peanut butter, for example, that has palm oil, but you can buy palm oil free versions. So my goal is in general for my purchasing is to try to get everything palm oil free and it's becoming available to more often, but
Yeah, yeah, I
yeah.
think that one is with alternatives being available and maybe a
Yeah.
synthetic version of it so we don't have to have land intensive palm oil crops being grown.
I think there's plenty of palm oil alternatives. I don't think it's really necessary to be putting palm oil in as many things as we are, but that's just me. But yeah, interesting that he brought that up because I'm pretty sure that's the first time he really brought that up in this whole book. Um, but yeah, okay. So and then he says that we need to quintuple clean energy and climate related R&D over the next decade, right? And he's suggesting about $22 billion per year for clean energy R&D, um, which only represents 0.02% of the global economy, and we spend more on gas per year. So, yeah. And he also says that we should spend about $37 billion per year on. Wait, so is he saying 22 or 37? I'm a little confused on that.
Uh, no, he's using the 37 billion from the NIH as a comparison. Like they're using 37 billion for drugs and treatments.
Oh, to say
If
that
we if we
it's
if
not that
they can have
much.
that much money, why can't R&D just get a measly 22 billion? Is
Okay,
That's what he's
gotcha.
doing there. But
Yeah,
with the
okay.
amount of spending that Biden is doing in the first place, there should be no issue obtaining, more than 22 billion bucks for
Yeah, that's what
R&D.
I was thinking too. He's really kind of a benefit for putting his prices so high right now is that if they drop lower, then at least they're still high, right? Though honestly, we need that the amount that he wants. But anyways, getting political here. So okay, he says for number two, make bigger bets on high risk, high reward R&D projects, which is not something I thought about that the government naturally does, but it does all the time. And I love his example of the Human Genome Project because I honestly didn't think about where the funding came from with that, you know? But like obviously that's benefited um the country so much. And it was like very, very good investment, even though it was high risk. Um, yeah, the estimate was for every dollar invested by the federal government in the project, it generated $141 in return to the U.S. economy. That's just incredible. And I think that's definitely something that can easily be from like clean energy sources and stuff like that. They could easily be a U.S. economic boom if we get them right, you know?
Yeah, if we get it right and start exporting our technology, that would be
Right.
the way to go to get our money back.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and so then he says number three is match R&Ds with our greatest needs. Duh. Um, and I hadn't heard of the Sunshine Initiative. I need to look that up. But that's really cool that they dropped the price of solar energy. I didn't know they did that here, honestly. And then work with industry from the beginning instead of like just doing patchwork between industry and government. And I completely agree with that. Um, yeah. And then he talks about accelerating the demand for innovation, um, going through the proof and scale up phases, right? So he says that low carbon cement, next generation nuclear fission, carbon capture and sequestration, offshore wind, and cellulosic ethanol and meat alternatives are all in the proof phase. I would argue some meat alternatives are in the scale up phase already, but
Mm, yeah, I think in smaller, maybe niche areas right now, at least for
and I think
that.
offshore is also scaling up now pretty fast.
Yeah, it's what here in the U.S. we have one project on contract, and in around the world there's probably two or three projects.
Yeah, okay, it's small, but it's gaining interest quickly. I feel like that's been a big topic
Yeah, I
recently.
think I think the UK may be the biggest one right now in offshore.
Mhm. Mhm. I think you're right. Um, and then he talks about use procurement power. I have trouble with that word, which basically means, hey, the government are that they are a lot of people and do a lot of things. So if the government buys something, then um, it will help lower the price of green products um, and encourage it to be used in the public sector. So we see that all the time. As you said with the internet, yeah, I would have said that too, because the US government or anything, most things were started via defense purposes, let's be real. The radio.
I mean, the individuals started them, and the Defense Department was like, "Hey, we love this idea. You were already working for us, so we're going to take it." So yeah,
Right.
that's what
But
happens.
also a lot of the products were originally thought for defense purposes. Like, they
Well,
thought of
that's where
it
the
because of
incentive
the
is.
yeah, yeah. And I think we are seeing that a lot. And then also the government can create incentives that lower costs and reduce risk and build infrastructure that will get new technologies to the market and change the rules so new technologies can be completed. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, if
Um,
there's ever a social movement or a PR thing that the government wants to do because they are the basically the largest polluter. Um, Switching to any type of clean energy, created product or along those lines is probably the best thing for them. To tout their own message. We're walking the line, so we're not hypocrites.
Exactly. Yeah. I hope that starts happening soon because I always get nervous like when when our government changes hands, if we haven't already purchased things like that and then they change their opinion on the topic, that will hurt a lot. Because I feel like about like 3 years is where we would be to actually really start mass investing in, I don't know, to be like in the middle of mass investing, and it would just be a shame if it just died real quick, you know?
Yeah, I mean, if that mass investment, usually if they've already done that, they're not gonna turn around and just like dump it. It's you ever seen the military buy well, they order new airplanes or whatever it is. Well, once they order
Hmm.
them, even if they don't want them anymore, they still order them. They might sit somewhere, but it isn't dumped. They continue to
Hmm.
have them. I think it would be the same thing, if there is, say, like the carbon-free cement, and they start ordering it and everything else along with it, they're going to use it. It's not. I don't think it's going to go anywhere as long as if it works, it works.
Right, right. I'm just saying that I hope that we've changed our habits enough by that point that it won't be such a risk. Like it'll already be in
Mhm.
motion, you know?
If it's already in
But
motion for like a government contract, it's not going to go anywhere. Um, but the I guess the fear with that is they could change how much of that they buy. As you said, if we're three
yeah,
years in of a 6-year plan or something, and they're like, yeah, we're gonna
right,
downgrade how much we import into this area, then there might be a factor. But at that point, it's almost like, well, hey, 60% of our fleet for the U.S. mail is already using these vehicles. What's the point of having the other set?
right. Very true. Yeah. And then what was the other thing that was being said? Oh yeah, so some policies that could help would be putting a price on carbon and the standards, the different standards, the clean electricity standard, the clean fuel standards, and the clean product standards. I feel like those are some things that California has really embraced, at least like the first two are like the clean electricity and fuel standards. And that's partially why our gas prices are so much higher here, because we hold them to a higher standard a little bit. Um, but also they're just fucking high though at the same time. But it does encourage more people to buy electric over here. If you make
Yeah.
the fuel stupid high, then people will want to switch their cars.
Or not go anywhere. Yeah, it's one of the two. or
Yeah,
move out of your state.
right, right. Which, I mean, they are, but like when it becomes nationally a thing, then there's nowhere to go. Um, at least not for individuals. Companies, on the other hand, that's a whole different story. But uh, yeah. Then they also said he also said there needs to be policy-based incentives to get rid of old fossil fuel equipment, even if it's not actually old, which is as you were talking about earlier, it's hard to get um, different industries and businesses and governments to stop using things because they have them and they're new. You don't want an investment away.
What?
Hmm?
No, no, I was just flipping through the last page of the chapter.
The last page of the chapter. Well, okay, and then he starts talking about um who would go first in the way of like different. governments, national or state or all that kind of stuff. And he says that the national government needs to make the goal to get to zero, develop specific plans for meeting the goal, and then fund the research. So those are the main things that need to happen. Honestly, that's the main breakdown, and that there's a role for every uh, department in the government to do something, like Department of Agriculture and Environmental Protection Agency and Department of Transportation and all that good stuff, right? And that's what we're starting to see. So yay!
Hmm.
um, and one thing that he had mentioned was the government and multilateral banks need to find a better way of tapping into private capital, and that's another thing that I think we're starting to see happen right now too. So that's cool. Yeah. Do you have anything
Yeah.
to add so far?
No, I mean, I agree for the most part for what he's saying. All the players have to be there, or somebody's not going to be happy about what's happening, or somebody
Hmm.
gets left behind. Uh, but yeah, really, that banking part is probably one of those areas that people were just not optimistic about for a
Hmm.
couple years ago,
Hmm.
and that
Hmm.
has changed. Whether it's just a financial decision or investments, or if it's part of their board decision. There you see a couple banks and banking entities seeing the whole green economy stuff being a boon. Then it's the next big thing, really.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. I think I mean, I'm starting to see it everywhere, just talking about the financial implications of climate change and also what the financial institutions can be doing about it. It's a hot button issue right now, which is beautiful. Love to see it. Let's keep it up. And this, I believe, I don't remember what month it was written in, whether or not he knew Biden had won, or whether or not he still wasn't sure. Do you know? I'm trying to find the copyright.
Well, this was
Oh,
I thought this
copyright
was written. I thought this was published.
2021.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. Well, I was just wondering, just because before national government action was like a possibility, then it was really like looking at state governments and what they made in the way of promises through like the U.S. Climate Alliance kind of thing. But now, since there's a national policy, like that's still really good too, but it's not as as crazy of a thing because now the whole country is back on board with it, right? But obviously, still state governments have a lot to do and they need to make promises on their own as well. But yeah.
Well, that's state and local governments. That's where most of the active stuff happens day to day,
Yeah.
or year to year. Is those changes, those inputs, and that's where all your factories, all your facilities, all your new products, they set themselves up in states that are friendly towards their products or whatever. The federal government, you have, depending on your business, you might have to file something with them, but really it's the state you're looking at. And so I think they're the biggest driver, and then the federal government tends to work a little slow sometimes. Um, and so really, if any of this is going to get done, the states are going to have to be like, hey, we're all on board. You guys get something done that
Right.
complements what we're doing. And I think it's almost easier to pass something in Congress or even through the federal government, through the Federal Register or any type of policy at that level when the states already have something implemented that's very similar. Because then there's less challenges. There's already a regulatory setup in place where it's familiar, where people are not going to be, I guess, angry at the bureaucracy that's put on them.
True, true. Yeah, I know that's fair. And it's good that there's 26 states, so it's bad that it's only 26. I would have liked there to be more by this point. I wonder if it's changed at all, but I kind of doubt it. Um, but Also, maybe because, the government's putting a little bit of feet to the fire for states and stuff, that states are actually taking the issue more seriously, you know?
Well, I think with states that actually, they get accepted into some of their programs, get federal funding, there's a little more incentive to move in some of these directions.
Yeah, true. So it goes both ways. Bottom line, it goes both ways. Um, and so he talks about what state governments can do, and then local government and city councils and local agencies and stuff like that. And then he goes back to his beautiful, normal thing that he says, which is green premiums. Uh, we need to lower the green premiums if we're going to have middle and low income countries join us. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
for all his talk about green premiums, he doesn't really expand too much into them in this book. He
no,
just
he
mentions
just
them here
trusts
and
that
there.
actual policymakers know what he's talking about.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately that's a smart thing to do for this book because he's trying to stay out of the technical stuff. But I guess half the time when you read it, you forget that all he's referring to is an externality, and that's it. Something that just hasn't had a cost attached to it.
Right. Yeah, no, exactly. And it's crazy how long we've talked for putting a price on carbon and stuff like that, and it still hasn't happened in any capacity. Has any country put a price on carbon?
Well, okay, so here in the U.S., there's renewed talk about putting a price on carbon. Um,
Yeah.
and so that's in this. I think the Senate is talking about that. They renewed that. And there's been always been a couple bills that have basically never had the votes for it. But putting a price on
Exactly.
carbon has it all depends on like carbon price is something we should have, a price on carbon. But what it comes down to is policy comes in different structures. So a lot of countries, have the cap and trade, which is technically a price on carbon. Uh, you know, and then other people have carbon tariffs or border adjustments, and that's a price on carbon in another structure. But nobody has something as, I guess, complex and what not I want to say not as effective as something that would attach a primary cost of carbon per product or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
Um, so I think somebody had mentioned somewhere to me and said, "Hey, like other countries, they wanted to talk to their legislature, and they're like, yeah, other countries have a price on carbon. Well, it's true they do, but it's not the way people think about a price on carbon in terms of like every product has their a carbon, dollar amount. It's this group of products have this, or when they cross the border. So yeah, carbon pricing is
Yeah.
something. It all depends. The effectiveness of a carbon price policy all depends on this how it's structured for society and for the
Mm-hmm.
economy.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
The big one here in
Hmm.
the U.S. is the carbon dividend or the carbon fee and dividend bill that
Yeah,
basically puts a price on carbon and then gives all the I guess the money to lower income people and middle income or whatever their price range is.
that's nice.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
he
it's
was talking about how. Oh, go ahead.
that bill touts a what they call a revenue neutral structure, which a lot of people really really like.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, there was different ideas that he had brought up for what the money could be used for. It could either be used for R&D research, or it can be used for like going back in the pockets of people for having to pay those higher energy costs and stuff like that.
Yeah,
I like both those
I think
ideas.
yeah, I think giving it back to people is really in terms of policy is an easier sell
Yeah, it is
than saying,
definitely.
hey, we're going to divert this money to a government program because that money doesn't always get used in the most efficient way, or whatever the opposition is. But giving it back to people, it's hard to oppose that.
Exactly. Though, isn't it funny that I feel like when people talk about giving money to people, they assume that people are going to use it in the most inefficient way, when really the government
Well,
uses it all the time in an
why? Well, I
inefficient
guess
way.
if it's you give it to the individual, that's their choice. The money was originally theirs in the first place. But
Yeah.
the money government's like, well, government's just really has supposed to be accountable to other people, but really isn't.
Hmm.
So yeah, I know what you're saying with that, but
Yeah,
I
it's
think it's
just kind
really
of
a
funny.
false, it's a false equivalency to compare the
Yeah, I
individual
think so
spending
too.
money on the government.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And that, should we move on to chapter 12 then?
Yeah, what each of us can do. Yeah.
Yeah. So, as a citizen, he suggests making calls, writing letters, attending town halls, the usual. Look locally at what, as well as nationally, at what you can do, and run for office. Okay. I have a fun idea that I think that people should do. If they have a little extra cash, they should buy climate change related books and put them in the local libraries, because I feel like there's no climate change content. Even okay, so I was looking at like, actually no, I don't want to bash this one group, but there wasn't enough books. Is all I'm saying. This I feel like the information's out there for people, but like no one knows where to look. And so it'd be cool if we just like made it even more popular and just like it's everywhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Yeah, that's just what I think. Also, I saw there was a recent children's book on climate change that came out. Like, boom, there you go. Put that in the library.
Hmm. I
Um,
see many of those books in the smaller bookstores though, too. A lot of the climate change stuff.
yes,
The libraries, yeah, they really haven't ventured to the climate change stuff unless it's a big book like maybe this one, the Bill Gates one, or it's a more of
maybe.
a technical book, or just a solutions based book.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, yeah, like put drawdown there. Put drawdown in the in the library.
Yeah, that was at
That's
my
a good
I think
one.
that was at my yeah, that was at my library.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, it was. But we have a pretty good
Good.
library here. But I also think, you can, the academic libraries too tend to have more uh global climate change related books anyways.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I guess use that for a metaphor though in a way, because like just put this information in more public spheres. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
as we were talking about earlier with like heat pumps and stuff like that, the information's all out there, but it just needs to be put in a there needs there needs to be a climate hub. There just needs to be something where people can easily be like, how did what's something I could do? Okay, like I feel like I need to do something. What can I do? I mean, there's a lot of websites out there for that, but I still feel like people don't know where to go.
Well, there's so much information that the everyday person gets overwhelmed.
Yeah, exactly.
Unless you know what you're looking for and you are decently good at a bit of research, you get lost in the weeds, is what that comes down to.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
like, you're talking about in public places where to put some of these books, there's something, I don't know if you have these around where if you've even seen them, but we have something that pops up in some of these towns called, they're basically mini library
Oh yeah.
boxes. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I've seen climate change books in those, and those are open to the public. Every couple blocks or whatever it is. I think that's a really nice casual way to get people to read something different without
I think
maybe
so
going
too.
into the library or badgering them about it.
Yeah, right, right. No, it's a good point. Yeah, no, I love those boxes. They're great. Yeah, so just stuff like that. Whatever. I mean, I use the library as a public sphere example, I guess, but I think there's just a lot of better ways we can inform or just like help our peers learn more about this topic. that's so
Yeah.
important
Yeah. I
because
guess
they
you could
are
leave.
consumers.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
because they are
Yeah. The
consumers.
consumer thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
The
look at
consumer
that
thing
transition.
is ooh, making them smoother every time.
No, thank you.
Yeah. The consumer thing is really gonna be, I guess, the biggest driver of all this because
Absolutely.
somebody opposes something like your electric vehicle. It doesn't matter how good it is. Same with, as you mentioned, the plant-based burger. Like
Mhm.
people don't want it. Um, People are still gonna go to down the street to Wendy's or whoever still has the regular meat burgers and pay
Mhm.
$2 more, whatever it ends up being. For the consumer, the electricity thing is probably one of the harder things to find a solution to because all electrons are the same, regardless of where they're
Mhm.
coming from. So
Mhm.
you'd almost have to, the utility companies would almost have to give more transparency of, I guess you could research your local utilities, but they're usually you can't guess where your electricity is coming from.
Yeah, it's really hard. I've tried to do it myself with like PG&E and stuff, and I get confused.
Yeah.
Even though I know
Um,
that there's a solar farm like literally 20 minutes away from me, and I don't know if I can tap into that. It's just like shit.
yeah, and see that's the thing. When the way electricity transmission lines is set up and everything, and the grid, there's no way you can directly tap into it.
Mhm.
Because the electrons from any of the plants run through the transmission lines and they go to the air that's needed. They
Mhm.
can't be in a real sense they can't be directed unless you have like a line that's single to your from the plant to your house, or you're just like a
Right.
couple blocks away from the first transformer, um, the transformer yard or something.
Mhm.
Because,
Mhm.
so I think that's something that's a little different, or a little harder for the consumer to get
Yeah, I
wrap their head
agree.
around until until there's more renewable electricity on hand.
But something that they can do is doing things like making sure you have LEDs, which is like one of the most basic
Yeah,
forms of energy store sent or energy saving methods, but it's a thing still. Install a smart thermostat, insulate your windows, buy more efficient appliances,
yeah,
replace
the
your heating
energy
and cooling
efficiency.
system with a
Yeah,
heat pump. Yeah, just
yeah,
increasing efficiency in general if you have the money to be able to do so, and if that's something that you're able to do, do it, seriously. There's smaller ones to do than larger ones, and just do what you can. And it will not only help the environment, but it'll also help your pocketbook too, because why not? That sounds great. Um, and other ones is like buy an electric vehicle, of course, if you're in the position to do so. And plant-based burgers, they're getting better. They are. They're still a little questionable at times, but they're getting better. And even more so, I think that plant-based like recipes have gotten better. Ignore the synthetic stuff. There's actual protein in vegetables, and I think that some recipes are getting better at making that taste good and fill you up, you know?
yeah. Making
It's a
it
little more
tasty
prep work.
is probably the biggest selling point. You know,
Yeah, exactly.
you can have the
There's even been
plant-based or like more green-based recipes, but if they don't taste good or they're kind of like, for most people, nobody's gonna switch over it.
exactly, exactly. There's been I can't remember the name of the website, but there was like a recipe, like a top recipe website that recently went like meatless, or I think actually it was got rid of beef recipes specifically. And then there's been some like world-renowned four or five-star restaurants. I think it's five, right? Five-star restaurants that have switched to vegan only. So I feel like chefs are starting to consider this a creative challenge. You know, and so that might be kind
No,
of cool to see.
yeah. it's some of those higher end restaurants and some of those
Yeah.
niche restaurants for sure.
But that's where
You see
recipes
more of that.
start, you know?
Yeah, I mean,
That's where it's
as long as people like eating them, and are willing to pay what it's worth.
but no, but that's where like recipes start. That's where people find new flavor profiles that end up just tasting good. You know, we've relied on meat for so long as our as a main flavor in our foods, and other cultures have not, and yet they've made delicious dishes themselves, you know. I think we just need to adjust what our goal is for our flavor profile, you know, to make it more plant-based. I think that some chefs have taken that on as a challenge, and so it starts with the big five-star restaurants and stuff like that, and then next thing you know it's on a recipe in Real Simple magazine, and it's more dumbed down, and the ingredients are more readily available, and boom, you know.
Yeah, I see that as a long term thing that's happening, or long term out,
I think it's already happening.
plan.
I
Well, it's
disagree.
happening,
I
but it's
disagree.
not. It's still a long term, like, see it more pervasive in our society. It's like it's not like really I can go down the street. I guess I can find options, but I can't find a mom and pop place that's purely plant based vegan or anything.
Okay, well you can't. I can. In the Bay
I,
Area or in Monterey County, California, I can. But
well, I
it's
guess
getting
if
there,
I
is what I'm
go,
saying.
I go and see, but who wants that? I'm gonna stick with
I
my
do.
red meat, pork, fish, eggs,
No.
everything else.
Bad.
It's
Bad,
tasty.
Mickey. Eggs are not bad. Eggs aren't bad. Fish depends if it's sustainably caught. Some fish are better
All the
than others.
seafood.
Yeah. Like there's options even just for more sustainable meat. But anyways, okay. So then as an employee or an employer, he has a few suggestions. One is set up an internal carbon tax within your company.
Yeah.
Another one is prioritize innovation in low carbon solutions if you are in the field to do so. Um, be an early adopter. I'm actually kind of surprised that one wasn't in the consumer thing as well. Because, yeah, just, you know, it's like the influencers that you see on YouTube and stuff, you know, that have gotten the whole zero waste and vegan movements going. Just be an
Mm-hmm.
early adopter if you can, if you're in the position to do so or you want to be in the position to do so. And that helps a lot. And engage in policymaking decisions, connect with government funded research, and help early stage innovators get across the valley of death, which is what he described as the stage in which um, new technology and new innovations end up in the market, and see if they're taken up by the public or not, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So those are some ideas that he has for employers and employees. Is there any parts that you would like to emphasize more?
No, I mean I guess we're seeing all this stuff happening.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's just a matter of having it happen more. And I think
Hmm.
really a lot of companies are doing the internal carbon tax just to get ahead of what they see in terms of government policy, starting to happen.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That's the main stuff I want to talk about for the last chapter.
Yeah, I think yeah,
And then
that's the end of that.
yeah. And then the he did it afterwards talking about climate change and COVID. And you know, it's the main things are this shows an example that science really matters as we're facing this. And he talks about the inequities that we're seeing more at extreme rates due to the pandemic, and kind of comparing what's happening there with what we're seeing with climate change, making sure that we don't repeat some of the same mistakes, um, and showing the parallels between the two because if climate change continues to go on as it's going, then we're going to see way more pandemics. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we have to take some of the lessons from COVID and apply to whatever is going forward.
Yeah,
Because inevitably there are going to be some people who do get kind of fall through the cracks, but we have to minimize that, you know, as best we
as much as
can.
possible. Yeah. And also, he then ends it with what a lot of politicians are trying to emphasize, which is we need to bounce back from COVID in a clean energy way, in a way that doesn't make climate change worse, you know,
Mm,
and that
which might burst
is,
our bubble here. Talking about that statement, there was an article that just came out that coal has rebounded in the last six
yeah,
months. As a
yeah,
surge of the surge of economies and new plants being built. I was like, well, now we're
yeah.
on the uptick for that.
Well, it could be short-lived because at the same time, the COP26 president said that we need to stop using burning coal by 2025. So
Ooh,
hopefully
that might
this is the
be
final
cutting it
spike.
close for. It'll
Yeah,
be cutting it close for some countries. But yeah, coal was trending down anyways. But there are a couple new plants already built, so we'll see if
well, I think they're going to
it'll
find that
it'll
they just made a
stagnate if
very poor
anything.
investment. I
Oh, I
think
think
I
yeah,
think the
especially yeah.
yeah, I have a feeling, and maybe it's just me being hopeful, but I have a feeling that it is going to be a little short burst that will die quick. Because coal was already declining and they might have gotten a little excited about something, but honestly, I think that they're kind of faking it and they're realizing that we're entering a post-coal world and they're getting desperate to make their investments before other people catch on that it's not a good idea. But that's my take on it. I
Well,
think
I
it's going to
guess
be
in a
very
couple
short-lived.
countries, it's a short-lived. Even if it is short-lived, they are going to build it because for that time being, it is profitable, and because it's the cheap, or at least in some areas, it's one of the cheaper alternatives. For if you need, that intensive electricity use in a
Yeah,
developing
I hear that.
country. So
I think
that
they're
would
just
be
going
the
to
only
find
places where it stays, at least past
I
2025, 2030.
yeah, I just think in the next 5 years they're going to realize that was a poor investment because then they're going to have to shut it down. You
I
know,
don't know. I
I
think they'll be hitting a slim margin. It'll be less profitable to buy the coal and get it shipped more than anything. But I think they'll try to keep them
yeah,
open as long as they can.
yeah, of
Kind of like
course. There's always going to be stragglers.
here in Illinois we have the Prairie Coal State plant, which they're trying to close down, but it provides some major electricity for downstate. So the plant itself have been trying to keep themselves open, but it's inevitable that
Hmm.
they're going to have to close or start
Yeah,
charging higher rates.
right. Well, on that note, we finished the book.
Yep. Took us all but what,
Yay!
6 weeks, 4 weeks or something?
6 weeks,
Yeah.
I think. Yeah. Yeah. Well, good for us, okay? Like, I don't know how many books you read nowadays, but like, this is honestly impressive for me to get through this many books in a short period of time. So I'm proud of myself. It's several, I mean, these books just came out recently, but there's been a lot of books that come out like in the past where it's just like, I've been meaning to read this. It would be great if I did, but I just am not going to. And this would have been one of them if I didn't do this. So, yay!
Yep. It gets put on a list regardless.
Exactly. Exactly. It's one of those books that gets put on a list. I have that list. It is still quite long, which is why maybe in the future the Climate Book Club will come back. But for now, I'm going to take a break because I just really need to. Uh, Um, because it's been a lot of books. And also, you know, this topic, I don't know if you know this, but this topic can be a little depressing and pretty dense. And
Yeah,
so
yeah, true.
it's a lot of brain power.
It overlaps with so much that it is
It
hard to.
does. It does. It really does. But once you see like the world in kind of this climate based perspective, it you start learning every moment you have. I feel like there's always something that connects to the topic of climate change, and if you just look for those connections, they're everywhere.
No, I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a mindset thing. But yeah. Okay. Well, Mickey, we're going to do that nuclear video. I want to create a Google Drive that has like each state, and let's start putting in the nuclear power plants that are opening versus closing in different locations to get a better read on what's happening.
Okay. That's easy enough to do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
we
figure
can.
you probably already know a lot of them.
I think I have it. I have that list somewhere already. But yeah, we can start with that one and see what comes. Go from there.
Yeah. All right, great. Well, it was lovely talking with you as always, Mickey, and I will actually have this video or the video version of this premiering on YouTube on time tomorrow. Unlike whatever happened last week. Jeez. Um, yeah. All right, have a good rest of your evening.
Same to you.
Bye.
Goodbye.